ride, Ricky. Come on, you got to be impressed.
I'm impressed.
Not only did they use it, they used the wrong tape.
Oh,
It's him, right?
he looked like a professor.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Philly Sports Convo. This is episode 27, but it's our Philly Sports Convo playoff special. Now, normally when I do one of these podcasts, I say my guest today is fill in the blank. But today, doing something a little different. This is not a guest. This is a co-host of the Convo today. And I wouldn't let just anybody invade my podcast, but this guy is a friend. He's a colleague. He's a damn good guy, and he knows a lot about sports, and especially about the Philadelphia Eagles. You know him from PHL 17. He's done a lot of reporting. He just started doing sports on the morning news. I'm happy for you, buddy, for that. By the way, you know that, Tyrone. Tyrone Sharper,
that.
PHL
Hey,
17.
everyone.
How you doing,
Thanks
Tyrone?
for having me back on, Jay. I know you call me the co-host, but it's good to be back on the Philly Sports
Now,
Convo
dude,
with
listen, and we talked about this. Via text. This is not my podcast. This is our podcast. All right, so we're gonna, we'll just chat, and if you want to cut me off and say no, Jason, I want to know about this. You ask me, you ask me questions. Why don't you be the host and I'll be the guest? How about that? No.
I appreciate that, man. You always say the kindest words.
No, and I mean it. I mean it. All right,
sir.
but I got to call you on the carpet for something right off the bat, okay? And
Okay, I'm ready.
I hope I'm not. And listen, you're, like I said, you're a friend. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but last time you and I talked about this game on Sunday, do you remember what you told me?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, man. I'm a little nervous.
That was 2 days ago, and I guess it hasn't changed, has it?
No.
Okay.
Not really, especially because I got a few notes here that I want to talk to you about as well. I wanna
Okay,
get
cool.
your thoughts on.
Yeah, let's do it.
But the great equalizer is coming on Sunday, and that being snow. So obviously we work very close to the weather reporting, and we know what's going on. Those numbers have changed now, Jay. It was like, a little bit of maybe an inch or whatever. Now it's like 3 to 6 inches. That's the equalizer.
Is that the update? 3 to 6 inches? That's what they're saying now. Is that what Monica said this morning?
That's what she said this morning.
Okay.
It increased quickly. So now I've played sports before, like I've talked about, man. That's the equalizer. So we talk about AJ Brown having a big game in LA, and we talked about Saquon, which he might have to have another big game in the snow.
I think he's going to.
Probably needs to borrow some of Shady McCoy's cleats.
I was going to say that's yeah. Who could forget that game? Shady. That was against Detroit, right?
Yeah, it was against Detroit. Remember, he played in another really good snow game in Buffalo when he was with the Bills. So
I forgot.
I don't know
that
this.
one.
Yeah, he just runs well in the snow, but that's changed my mind now. It's like the Rams. I don't know. The Eagles are going to be used to playing in this cold weather. The Rams, it might affect them a little bit. I want to hear what you think about the equalizer coming and that being the snow.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, you called it the great equalizer. That's exactly what it is, because it seems like typically when it snows, it would favor the offense because, the offense knows exactly what routes they have to run. The defense doesn't. So you kind of have to, turn on a dime and if you don't have good traction, that really could impact the defense. And for a team that, to a point has depended on defense all season long. They've got the number one defense in the league. That's going to be tough. But I got to tell you, and maybe it's me being a superstitious Philadelphia fan. You mentioned about how LA is not used to the cold weather. I know you remember this. The final game of the Vet, NFC Championship game, Eagles and Buccaneers. And what did people say about that game, Tyrone? You remember that?
You know, it's funny. Me and Dave Spadero, we just spoke the other day, a few days ago, and if you guys have a chance, check out the interview. It's on my.
It's a great conversation. It really is.
It was awesome. Dave's awesome, and he brought that example up exactly, and I was just like, yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. Bucks came down here and it was like, what? So no, it didn't bother them at all. So I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen. I know Matthew Stafford, he doesn't really have a good record when it comes to like these weather element games. I think he's like 1-5 or something like that. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but he's not really that good in bad weather games. And I noticed the Rams have had really good weather on the road this year. All their road games haven't been, bad weather. So they're really seeing some bad weather. Monica said it could be really coming down at kickoff, so and can continue throughout the game. So I'm really interested to see how that changes the game plan for both sides. But I would imagine Saquon, he's going to have another big day.
I agree with you, but yeah, if I remember, the stat was um, Tampa Bay in playing in conditions or playing in temperatures under 40 degrees, and they hadn't won in whatever it was X amount of years or whatever. So we
Yeah.
were all and wasn't that the game where I don't know if I'm confusing things. Was that the game where Brian Mitchell ran the opening kickoff back almost to the house?
Uh, that might have been that game, but it wasn't snowing in that game,
No,
right?
no, it wasn't snowing. It
It was
was it
just,
was
it was
it
just
was
cold.
cold. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was. I
and
think
the
it was
thinking,
that game.
and the rationale was, well, Tampa Bay hasn't won a game in under 40-degree conditions
Hmm.
in who knows how long, and well, it didn't matter. So bottom
Yeah.
line is, you're still worried, right?
A little bit. My confidence has only reason my confidence has gone up more. I mean, I feel like the Eagles will win the game.
Okay.
I just can't confidently say, yeah, they're going to win. I mean, I saw some people like 35-14, and I'm just like,
No, it's
I just don't know if that many points are going to be scored because of the weather factor. But when you talk about Saquon Barkley having another big game, it's very possible because unless the Rams have been in the weight room, it could look like week 12 all over again. That Eagles offensive line was moving them out of the way like children. So, I mean, the traction could play a factor. I don't know. The Rams really don't really close up their gaps that well, which is how Saquon was able to really run all over them. The Eagles were just exposing the gaps and one shifty move from him, and he's gone. So if the Eagles can get some traction on the snow and they get that field taken care of and they can plant their feet, I think Saquon just runs through the gaps all day again.
yeah, but you got to think after that first game against LA when Saquon had what 255 yards rushing, something
Yeah.
like that, over
Yep.
300 yards from scrimmage, you got to
Yep.
think that they're keying on him.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
they're gonna let if Hurts is going to beat them, he's going to beat them through the air.
Yeah.
So you and I have both said Saquon needs to have a big game, but I got to think that they're building that defense on Sunday around stopping Saquon. So
Absolutely.
he's probably not going to. I mean, look, he's not going to get 250 yards. We know that.
No,
If
I
he,
don't expect that.
if he can get 100, if he can get
That'd be great.
100, then I think. And it's funny. I feel like certain days Saquon can get 100 yards in his sleep. you know.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just like even when games where it seems like teams are slowing him down, he can still hit that 100 yard mark in a game, which is always impressive. He can hit a home run at any time. That's what's so fun about watching Saquon Barkley, man. He's very shifty in the gaps and through the holes, and he can break one on you at any time. So hopefully he could get something going on Sunday, but I'm going to be very interested to see how this game plays out for sure.
So, I mean, obviously, going in, the Eagles have a couple of advantages. Obviously, they've got the home field, they've got the fans. LA is coming off of a short week. They played on Monday
Yeah,
night.
yeah,
And because of what's happening out in Los Angeles, I mean, they poured so much emotion into that game on Monday night. And listen, they had to pack everything up and drive down to Glendale, Arizona to play that game because they couldn't play at SoFi. So they've been through so much. Now you got to
it's a
fly
lot.
across the country
Yeah,
and
it's a lot.
play the 2 seed in the conference. So, I mean, on paper, it looks daunting. But on the other hand, I got to think, and give me your thoughts, I got to think pretty much all the pressure is on the Eagles. The amount of
Yeah,
pressure that LA has is zero. I
yeah.
mean, I don't like the term playing with house money, but to a point, I think they're kind of playing with house money at this point.
I
What do
agree.
you think?
Their story has been great this year. I mean, their playoff percentage chances were very low at one point toward the end of the year, and they pulled it out. They get in, they knock off a 14. I think what the Vikings were 14-win team. So obviously they're writing a good story, and it reminds me of the Eagles when they didn't have as bad of a record when they won the Super Bowl that year, but they were underdogs. And I think as players sometimes that is extra motivation,
Sure.
right? When people doubt you, when people think that, oh, we're not in this game, we don't have a chance in this game, that makes you want to play harder. So, I mean, it's definitely a lot that they've gone through with everything that's going on in LA, and all the traveling that they have to do. And as you mentioned, playing here in the Eagles all time. 6-0 in divisional games in Philadelphia, right? You got all of
I
that
I
going.
didn't realize that. That's a good stat.
Yeah, yeah, they're 6-0 all time at home in divisional games. So it's like I don't know. I wouldn't in this situation, those are real factors, but I wouldn't give them much weight because I think the Rams are going to come and play, and they were flying around when they played the Vikings. Man, I was really impressed by the way they played. So, they're a really good team, but the Eagles definitely have a lot of things in their favor. To get this second home game is already pretty cool,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Because you never know when you go into that two seed if you're going to get a second playoff game at home, and they get that second playoff game. So the link's going to be rocking. It's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. Um, but I think the Rams they're going to be ready to play.
Oh, no doubt about that. And you mentioned the second home game. So now
Mhm.
we're in a position where we have to root for the Washington Commanders
I know, right?
because then you got the NFC Championship game at the link,
I
right?
know a divisional game as the NFC Championship would be crazy. It would
And
be crazy.
how about the Eagles getting a chance to knock off Josh Harris? I
Oh, oh,
cannot
that
stand that guy.
that would be sweet. I'll tell you just to talk about the Commanders real quick, man. I actually like Jaden Daniels and I like a few guys on that team. Obviously, we love Zach Ertz. I think they could upset the Lions on
Really,
Sunday.
really.
I do.
I mean,
I
look, they do
think
have talent, and Jaden
they
Daniels.
do.
Yeah, as you said, he's a hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, he can play, man. I really like him a lot. And I know, my true Eagles fans hate to hear me say anything good about divisional opponents, but again, I'm a football fan and
You
I
got to
just like
keep it
to keep
real.
it real.
Yep, exactly.
So
Yep.
I give credit where it's due, and I think they're a solid team. I think their defense may be a little bit, not as strong as their offense, but um I don't know. I've seen some weaknesses in that Lions defense that the Commanders offense may be able to expose. So I don't know. That could be an upset game, but in the sense, we are kind of rooting for the Commanders so we can get a home game in the NFC Championship if the Eagles win.
So you mentioned your conversation with Dave Spadaro. You
Yeah,
posted it on your social media, so I encourage everybody watching and listening to this to
yeah,
check
please.
out T Sharper at T Sharper TV. Right?
T Sharper TV. Yeah, it's on there. Post it. Check it out. We had great conversation.
Yeah. Dave is always great. He's always a home
Yeah,
run. I love the guy.
absolutely.
You had some great questions. You asked him about last week and
Hmm.
how Jalen Hurts had like a so-so game. Was it rust? Was there more to it?
Yeah.
Talk about his answer to that? How his thinking about Jalen Hurts going into this game?
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, a little bit surprised, not terribly surprised, but he said, he was rusty. I've been looking at the footage that I can see about that game, and I really don't know if it was rust the entire game. I think that the Packers were prepared. And I said that in our interview.
I agree.
I felt like they were covering really well, and I think because of how many games they lost down the stretch and they weren't that good going to the playoffs. Some people don't give them credit for how good their defense is, but their defense is pretty solid. So I think they watched film, they were prepared, they made Jalen think twice. He's coming off of, a little bit of a break, so maybe he wasn't as sharp. Like you said though, you mentioned you made a good point. Some of those earlier that 6 for 6 start were easy high percentage
Yeah.
throws.
Hmm.
So it's easy to be like, oh, Jalen, he's back. He's 6 for 6. Now, those are the type of throws you draw up for your quarterback after he's been off for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, but Dave said that he didn't think he was, he thought he was a little bit rusty. I was on the other end a little bit, thinking that, the Packers were just prepared.
So in your mind, um, and we can go back and forth on this. Keys to the game.
Mm.
What do the Eagles have to do on both sides of the ball, or all three if you want to include special teams, to win the game?
Um, well, I think they have to do the same thing that they did in LA. They gotta be able to slow down Cooper Cup and Puka Nacua. If they do that, then I think they'll be all right. And I think if they get some pressure on Matthew Stafford, that would be great as well. Again, I don't really know that the game plan is going to have a ton of passing in it. We'll have to see how the weather
Yeah.
is, but it's supposed to be windy, and snowy. So I can't imagine there be a lot of passing. So from that standpoint, I think they just have to prepare for the run. Williams is their running back. I think he's a pretty solid running back as well. So fill the gaps, get through there, make tackles. They have to tackle. Um, and I think they just have to want it more. The Rams are going to be ready to play, but I think they have to want it more. Um, Defense is going to win this game. That's another question I asked Dave Spadera. Like, this defense is really good, right? And he said it's probably one of the best defenses he's seen, and he's been around the team for a while. I think defense is going to be so key moving forward throughout these playoffs. Obviously, they've proven they can be really good, and I think that doesn't change for this game. Defense is going to have to win this game. I think it's going to be sloppy on the offensive side because of the weather.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'll give you another key, I think, especially with the weather being predicted to be the way it is. The ball's going to be slippery.
Yeah.
Turnovers. I mean, Jalen Hurts had a so-so game last week, but one thing he did not do was cough up the football.
He didn't turn the ball over.
If the
Yeah.
Eagles
Absolutely.
if they can win the turnover battle,
Hmm.
they got a good shot to win.
You know what? Yeah, and that's a really good point. Yeah, I didn't think to say that because sometimes when things are obvious, I just don't say them.
Well,
But
because you delve in deeper. You know,
that's a
you
really good point.
No, you see you go beyond the obvious. You know, I'm the
Yeah.
idiot. I'm the idiot who has to state I'm Mr. Obvious. That's what they call me. Obviously.
No, but that's
No.
a good point. That's a good point. And Dave said the same thing. And you know what? With the snow coming, it's likely that ball it's frozen, it's cold. It might just pop off the arm real quick. They have to put some Vaseline on their arms or something. But you're right. They have to protect the ball. And you know what? That brings my confidence up a little bit more because that Eagles defense has been able to force some turnovers, man. They can turn that ball over. So if they could get a couple of turnovers, maybe a couple fumbles, maybe one interception off Stafford, I think you're right. That's a really good point right there. That can sway the game anytime, no matter who the teams are.
And I'll tell you from the other side, I think a key for LA, if they can score first, take the crowd out of the game.
Mm.
And if LA jumps out to a lead, 7-0, if it becomes 10-0, if it becomes 14-0,
Yep.
the crowd's going to get impatient because Eagles
Yeah.
fans, rightfully so, are expecting big things.
They are.
And
I mean, they're confident, man.
And
I
well, but
love
see,
you
that's the thing.
guys, man.
No, listen, and you know, I mean, I like you. I mean, we've been Philadelphia sports fans our entire lives.
Yeah.
I'm a lot older than you, so I've been a Philadelphia sports fan a lot longer. But that being said, I mean, you know what the expectations are, but the thing about Philadelphia sports fans, okay, and I include myself in this because I get like this too. So please don't take this the wrong way, anybody watching or listening. But it's like all or nothing. It's like, after a good game, we're going to the Super Bowl. After a bad game, we're not making the playoffs. You know?
That's quick. That's how quickly we change, right?
if LA gets out to a lead, and if they take the crowd out of it, or if the crowd turns against the Eagles, then it's going to get ugly quick. I think the Eagles have to score first, and if they can score first, obviously that changes the complexion of the game.
I agree. 10 nothing might get the crowd out of it. I've been in that stadium for many times, and you can hear things that you can't hear on TV in the stands. So sometimes even when it's 7-0, like I remember, in that NFC Championship game with the Vikings, I was there, and Vikings they went up 7-0, and then they never scored again after that. The crowd wasn't lost after that first drive. They were kind of like, "Oh, okay, they made that look easy. All right, boys, let's go, let's get it going." And then after that, they didn't have to really worry anymore because it was just a 38-7
But
smacking.
You know what I remember about that?
Yeah.
Who was it? Patrick Robinson, was he the one who had the interception? And
Yep.
okay, if he doesn't make that interception, Minnesota was marching downfield. If you remember, they were about to score to make it 14-0. That interception changed everything.
Absolutely. That stadium was so loud, man. It was crazy when he was running that ball back. It was really, really, really loud. So I think, again, you're right. If they go down in a snowy game, the fans might be like a little bit worried. But yeah, I don't know if the Eagles are going to want the ball first. We'll have to see how that goes. But I wonder if they would want the ball first.
Well,
to try to just
okay,
go down the field
now
and
you're
score.
opening up another can of worms, Tyrone. Okay, have I ever talked to you about this? about
No,
deferring?
I don't think we ever talked about it.
Okay.
No.
All right. I cannot stand. I mean, okay, actually, let me backtrack. I didn't mind it as much this season because their defense has been so strong.
Yeah.
Okay. But like Nick Sirianni, since he's been here, if they win the toss, he always defers. And up
Yeah.
until this season, every single time he defers, the other team marches down the field and they score on the first drive. And before you know it, Eagles are down 7-0.
Yeah.
I hate deferring. Especially, the key is to keep the ball out of the other team's hands. Why are you going to give it to them to start the game?
Yeah.
If the key is to keep it away from them, why would you give it to them to start the game? That being said, this season I didn't mind it as much because the defense was so good. If you get a 3 and out and then you're getting the ball to start the second half, that's a good thing. But it wasn't always like this. So, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
In bad weather, you got to wonder what will happen if the Eagles win the toss.
You might be onto something with that toss though, Jay, because maybe I just came up with a theory as you were talking. Maybe the slow starts were because he would kick the ball like he would defer all the time. And
well,
then
that's
do you
why.
remember? I think it was Tampa Bay week 2. Someone started the game with the ball and they took the Eagles on a 10-minute drive that resulted in a touchdown
Well, that's the
in
thing.
the first quarter, and I was like, "Oh, this is not good."
When,
they just got smacked after
well,
that.
do you remember for like half the season, the stat was that the Eagles had never scored in the first quarter.
Yep.
I forget how long that went on for, but I made that
Somehow
point.
they were winning during that stretch.
Well, they were, but I made that point. Yeah, they're not scoring in the first quarter because they're deferring, and as good as this defense has been overall, they will bend a lot. They will give up yards. They won't break, but they'll bend. So
that's true.
The other team can go on like a 10-minute, 70-some yard drive that might only end up in a field goal. But they chewed up a lot of
offense.
They chewed up a lot of clock. Yeah.
Right.
So
exactly.
I will be curious to see what happens. In the case of bad weather, if the Eagles win, will they defer? Are you as worried as I am? Although in bad weather it may not make a difference because I don't know how many field goals they're gonna go for if it's that windy. But are you worried at all about Jake Elliott and his performance?
You gotta be.
Yeah.
You gotta actually. I mean, throughout the season, you had to be worried about every single kicker in the NFL. This was not the year of the kicker. It was really bad. I mean, they were missing field goal attempts. Not even just, they were just missing. Like, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I realized how many misses we're gonna have this year. But that has to be a concern, right? Jake Elliott this hasn't been his best season. It's supposed to be windy, it's supposed to be snowy, the ball is hard. We've seen many NFL games where in games like this, they won't even kick the ball because the weather is so bad. So it all depends on what that storm looks like, but there definitely has to be a concern there, even for just a simple field goal of a point after touchdown. So
yeah, well, he missed an extra point last week, and it's a shame because you want to talk about a franchise icon. I mean, Jake Elliott. It's cliche, but he'll never have to buy a meal in this town again. And if you recall the season they won the Super Bowl, what do you remember as the turning point for that season? His 61-yard field goal. Yep,
61-yarder. Yeah, that I was at that game. It was crazy.
Were you really?
I was there. Yeah.
Wow, that's
cool. I was there. So I was just watching. Who was back there? Someone was, I think wasn't it Odell? Wasn't it Odell? He was standing in the end zone, and I was in the end zone behind the kick, so I couldn't tell when it or if it went through. So I had to watch Odell's reaction to see if the ball went through, and his reaction let me know that he made it. But that was definitely a turning point. It was crazy. I think Carson Wentz promised him his game check too. I wonder if he ever got it.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I hope Jake is able. I just really hope the field crew just takes care of the field the best that they can.
Well, I mean, it seems
I
like
don't think the snow was supposed to start until like just before kickoff. So.
Well, and that's the problem. So it's like, if it's coming beforehand, you can cover the field up. You can kind of plan for it. But it's going to be snowing during the game, so
it is.
That's.
I got a question for you, Jay. I got a question. I want to go back to the defense real quick.
Do your thing.
All right, a big change on defense. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. likely the starter. We haven't heard anything like all signs point to him being a starter, but we haven't said, heard he is the starter. How do we feel about Jeremiah Trotter Jr.? He had some playing time. Both him and Orenbergs had playing time in that Week 12 matchup against the Rams. And Trot did some good things in coverage. He also made some tackles in the middle of the field. How do we feel about the young fella, from this area, St. Joe's Prep alumni? I think he
I
might be able to fill in pretty good.
I liked what I saw last week.
Hmm.
I agree. I think he will be fine filling in. Um,
Yeah,
and if we all know his father, the Axeman, like we
the
think we
Axeman.
do,
Yeah,
he's going to make sure his son's prepared for the game. So
absolutely.
I don't worry about Trot Jr. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Hmm.
Um, he seems to me like any time as you get further in the playoffs, you wonder how a rookie's going to react once the lights get brighter. Okay,
Yeah.
and now the lights are a little brighter because they're into the next round.
Hmm.
He doesn't strike me as a guy who worries about that. He doesn't strike me as a guy
No,
who's gonna be afraid of more people watching, the brighter lights, the bigger moment. Because he grew up around football.
he did.
He grew
Yep.
up around his dad having some big moments. Honestly, the thing I worry about on defense is not having N'Kobe Dean. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's a huge loss, and you feel bad for the kid because who knows? I mean, he's going to miss part. He's going to miss part of next season too.
It'd be tough.
I don't know how long that
It's a
recovery
long.
is, but
I
it's
think
it's a long time.
it's a good while. Yep, it's definitely a good while, and I hope he's able to recover well and make full recovery and get back out there on the field. He definitely took a step up this year. The Kobe Dean. You hate to see guys get injured. I would love to see both him and BG out there playing this year, but unfortunately
Yeah,
injuries are
BG's
part of the
another one.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just feel like, man, I hope we can do it for BG. It just sucks to kind of, he might have to consider coming back. If the Eagles don't win the Super Bowl, he's got to come back and win another one.
I
But
think he's got to come back either way. You don't want your career
yeah,
to end on an injury.
no, yeah, not like
I
that.
think he's got to come back either way.
Yeah, but just to talk about Jeremiah Trotter again, I had a chance to see some of his interview, some of his sound from practice, and very well spoken kid, and he definitely sounds like he's up for the moment, and he sounds like he's preparing. So, on the outside looking in, I mean, I got a chance to see him at the high school level. He's
Did
really
you?
good at the high. I did, yeah. He played with my nephew who played there as well. So, I got to see them, all play together, and
That's neat.
I think it's going to be good. I think he's going to be fine. He's going to fill in well. All the Eagles defense got to do is make their tackles, man. Just bring these guys to the ground.
Yeah, make their tackles. But you mentioned Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua.
Yeah,
That's no easy task for the likes of Darius. I mean, he's a big play Slay, but
big play
that's
slay.
that's tough, man. It's
Yeah,
well, okay. Who do you think has the better wide receiver tandem, L.A. or A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with the Eagles?
oh, that's tough.
Either one's
Uh,
a great pairing.
I'm a big fan of Cooper Cup. I obviously I love my birds. Oh, that's tough. I think I have to give the edge to the Eagles because AJ Brown he's just a beast. But Smitty also is one of my favorite route runners in the NFL, and I think I give him the slight edge when it comes to route running over Puka Nacua. But Cooper Cup is also a really good route runner, very shifty. So I give the slight edge to the Eagles because of the AJ Brown factor.
Got it.
He's just that guy. He's always open.
That's his social media, isn't it? Always open, right?
Yeah, it's something
It's like
like
at
1K
always
always
open.
open. Yeah,
Hey,
something like that.
I wanted to get your take on this. Did you hear what's this guy James Verse? Did you hear what he said?
Oh, Jared. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry,
You know
Jared
what?
Verse. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I can't read my hand. Jared Verse, edge rusher for the Rams. He says something like, now he grew up in like Central PA, I guess, something like that. He went to college at Bloomsburg.
Yeah.
I hate Eagles fans. They're so annoying. I hate Eagles fans. When I see green and white, I hate it. I actually get upset. I get hot. You think the
Man.
fans will let him have it on Sunday?
Oh, he's gonna hear it, and it's a bad idea when they have the potential to make snowballs and throw them at you. Because if they're doing well enough and they're beating the Eagles, hopefully he doesn't start chirping to them because those fans are going to be
You know
upset
what?
and
That's a
they
great
will
point.
a snowball at him. So
That is,
hopefully that doesn't happen. I wish he wouldn't have said that. You know, I'm gonna stand for Eagles fans until I'm in my grave, man, because I understand them. Okay, all of the hate for Eagles fans, I feel like is just not necessary, and sometimes a bad clip gets out, like we seen of Eagles fans just doing things that are not common in the link. Like speaking from experience, I've had to monitor some of these people. I've been in there with these people. It's just the narrative of just they're just the most terrible fan base in the world. I just don't. It's not true.
well,
And I'm speaking from experience and not from like a biased aspect of it.
no, I agree with you. And, there was that story with the one Eagles fan who berated the one Packers fan
Yeah, yeah. It was
that went
bad
viral. But, I've always said there's idiots in every fan base.
all the
But
time.
when it happens in Philly, it gets magnified because it's in Philly. Because the national media is lazy,
Yeah,
and it's such an easy
it's easy.
narrative.
Hmm.
There's those animals, those Philadelphia fans. I mean, snowballs with Santa. They still talk about that. You know when that happened?
A long,
1968.
a long time ago. A long time ago, and they won't let it go. I've done a couple hits on PHL 17 with Santa. I said, "See, we love Santa. You guys are lying on us. We love Santa Claus." But I don't know, man. I like you said, it's an easy narrative to create, and sometimes you have those Eagles fans who fuel that narrative and make it easy for them to continue to just paint a bad picture. I'm telling you, Eagles fans are great, man. They're passionate about their team. And one thing I realized by just sitting back and listening to them in the stadium, they know football.
They
A
do.
lot of a lot of them know what's going on in the game when it's happening when they're there. So, um, this is a tough city, man, and there's tough people that live there. So they work hard to go to those games, and we love our Eagles, so they really need to stop that. But I mean, what is he supposed to say? He's going into a divisional game. He's supposed to say stuff like that.
Well, you don't have to
The
say
hate
that.
word is a little bit too
Yeah.
far. It was a little bit heavy, but relax. I just hope the Eagles smash this team for that reason now.
Just as a quick aside, do you know the background behind the snowballs at Santa thing?
I've heard different things and I've seen video of it. I think Santa was a Washington fan at the time. I don't know if that's
So,
right or not.
okay, so here's what happened. And if anybody watching or listening, if I'm getting any of this wrong, just shoot me a message on social media. But this is how I've heard it.
Yeah.
Last game of the season, Eagles were playing at Franklin Field at the time.
Hmm.
There was a huge snowstorm, okay? It was snowing. The Eagles were 1-12. It was a 14-game season back then.
Hmm.
They were 1-12. This was the final game of the season. Okay? Nobody mentions that Franklin Field was sold out to watch a one-win football team in a snowstorm. Okay?
They're not going to mention that.
So the Eagles were planning some kind of big Christmas holiday halftime show, and the Santa Claus couldn't make it because of the weather. They see a guy in the stands who's wearing a Santa Claus outfit. Okay? I guess Santa didn't have, Rudolph and all the rest of the reindeers. They must have been like out or something because he couldn't get there in the snow.
Right.
So they find this fan dressed in a Santa outfit, skinny guy, looked nothing like Santa, but because he had a Santa outfit on, they begged him, they paid him, can you go on the field and be part of this celebration? Well, the fans saw this. The Eagles are, the Eagles, it's a one-win team. It's snowing. And fans were like, you know what? That's the sorriest looking Santa I've ever seen. So they just started pelting him with snowballs. Santa, the guy who was Santa, did interviews subsequently, and he thought it was funny. And you want to hear the best part about that game, Tyrone?
Yeah.
So the Eagles won that game, finished the season 2-12. That win on that final week cost them the number one draft pick. Do you know who the number one draft pick was?
No.
He was taken by the Buffalo Bills.
OJ Simpson,
O.J. Simpson.
the juice.
O.J. Simpson could have been a Philadelphia. Look, not that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying. I mean, and obviously this was well before we knew of what O.J. was. But as a football player, can you imagine if he was here? He could have been an Eagle.
I hear people talk about that often. How OJ could have been an Eagle.
Yeah,
It'd have been. I would have loved watching OJ highlights as an Eagle. That'd be crazy.
It would have been.
It'd be awesome.
Would have been. Okay, before we wrap this up, wow, we've been talking almost 40 minutes. See, this is why I wanted to have you. This is why I wanted to do like a co-host thing, because it's like, you and I should do like a TV playoff special, but that's another conversation for another time.
That you know what, that sounds like a great idea. Sounds like a great idea.
So I'm curious. So much was made about A.J. Brown reading a book on the sidelines. And I don't think you and I talked about this in the newsroom at all. What was your take on that? Did you think it was funny? Did you have a problem with it?
It didn't bother me. I mean, if I was his teammate, I wouldn't have cared unless we were getting blown out or something. But like, come on, dude, at least act like But it was, I think what changed the narrative for it all is the book he was reading.
Yeah.
And
he made it a bestseller.
Yeah, the author actually was at the NovaCare complex today, and he met A.J. Brown. I saw some clips. I think
that's very cool.
Sal Powell posted some clips of them meeting and chatting and having a small conversation. So I think AJ, initially, I thought AJ was kind of just dealing with frustration of not getting the ball, but he clarified that. He said it wasn't frustration. He just it's just how he kind of refocuses his mind and maybe just relaxes himself to stay locked into the game. I don't know. Whatever works for A.J. Brown to be A.J. Brown, I don't have a problem with it.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
I think it's a great story. It'll be an even bigger story if the Eagles go to the Super Bowl and possibly win it. You'll see shirts with the book on it with AJ's face like photoshopped on the cover or something. I don't know. The book might sell thousands more. I really don't know. I think it'll turn into something, but it really didn't bother me any because of what he was reading. And in the moment, it really didn't matter too much. It wasn't like he was trying to be disrespectful. And once his teammates come out and say, it's the recipe, right? Kind of jokingly saying it's the recipe. It's how AJ Brown stays AJ Brown. So it doesn't bother his teammates who he goes to battle with every Sunday. It's definitely not going to bother a fan of myself from the seats. It works for them. It works for me. The Eagles have 14 wins. They're in a divisional round. What are we complaining about?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's perfectly put. All right, I got a couple more questions for you, but you said you have some stuff for me, so I don't want to step on your toes. You got anything for me?
Well, we covered a lot, but I do want to talk about Nick Sirianni a little bit. I actually asked Dave Spadaro a similar question. I didn't even get to ask Dave this question because I ran out of time. But I asked him about Coach Nick Sirianni and just about him being a coach, but I had another part to that question. And it was, does he need to win the Super Bowl to avoid any more heat, right? Because, he's already found ways to win, right? Whatever you want to say about Nick Sirianni, fine. Maybe he has corny quotes. Maybe you don't like some of the stuff he does on the sideline. The biggest thing in the NFL is winning, and he has the fourth highest percentage of winning.
That's right.
Or something like that, some stat like that. Well, how do you feel? Does Nick Sirianni need to win the Super Bowl this year, or will he feel heat either way if they don't make the Super Bowl?
I think if they get to the NFC Championship game, and if they're playing Detroit in Detroit, and it's a close game, and the Lions win, I don't think you can. Unless he does something to directly cause the loss, a la, like earlier this season when he kept, going for 2 points for no reason and, going forward on 4th and 8 when he could kick a field goal, that type of thing. If he does something like that, which I don't think he would do in an NFC Championship game, but barring something like that, if they get to the NFC Championship against Detroit and they lose, okay, you know what? They were the number 1 seed in the conference. They were 15-2. I mean, they got a hell of a team.
Yeah.
If Washington upsets them,
Mm-hmm.
and the Eagles play Washington at the Link in the NFC Championship game and lose, then he gets heat. So I think it depends on the circumstance. I don't think.
Okay.
Depending on the circumstances, I don't think he has to win the Super Bowl. That being said, I mean, you alluded to it. I mean, he's got his quirks.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his corny sayings. You got to water, you got to fertilize.
Flowers.
Yeah, right. I mean, we all made fun of him for that. But the team seems to buy in. The team obviously likes the guy. The team will play for the guy. And, what'd you say? He's got the 4th highest winning percentage.
Something
in history.
Yeah.
Some of the names in front of him, 1, 2, and 3, are huge names. So maybe he's doing something right. I mean, the guy.
Part of the credit does have to go to Howie, I guess, because of the roster that he's built. And honestly, the roster that he's built going forward for the next few years, the Eagles, if everything goes well, they'll have these core guys around Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Those guys are signed for a little bit. So, but at the same time, he finds ways to win football games.
Well, here's my response to that, okay? And you're right. Howie Roseman deserves a ton of credit. The Eagles have an amazing roster. But, say you're going to cook dinner, all right? You can have the greatest ingredients ever. If you don't know how to mix them up, if you don't have the proper recipe, your dinner's still going to taste terrible. So,
good point.
I mean,
good analogy.
I think we all need to start recognizing that maybe Sirianni's actually a really good coach.
Good, yeah.
And
he connects well with his players. I know there was some. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I know there was something with him and Jalen potentially not, being on the same page. I think that relationship is starting to mend a little bit. We really don't know. I mean, we could just try to create a picture of what they tell us in press conferences and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, he just know how to keep his locker room together, and I think that's a big part of being successful in the NFL too.
Okay, but see, I kind of think the whole Jalen Sirianni thing got blown out of proportion, and I'll tell you why. Do you? It's a loaded question. Do you get along with your boss all the time? I mean, nobody does. Nobody does. Do you get along with your wife all the time? No, my wife and I argue. It doesn't mean we have a bad relationship. Just because Sirianni and Hurts went through a bad patch doesn't mean that overall they don't have a good relationship. Doesn't mean they don't respect each other. Doesn't mean they don't work well together. They just argue sometimes, like two normal human beings do.
It's football.
Not everybody enjoys their boss all the time. Okay, It doesn't happen that way.
Absolutely, especially when it's like, Jalen's like, I'm out here playing, you're called to plays. I don't know if Jalen says that, but maybe the mindset is just like, okay, we got to work together on this thing. And when they don't see eye to eye on how they want to execute on the field, it's a competitive sport, and they're men. You know what I mean? Things are going to happen. So yeah, I definitely think it got blown out of proportion, but I would love to see these guys win a Super Bowl. I don't think he'll feel any heat. I think he will be back next year. I don't think there's going to be any problem there, but I would love to see them win a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, even if they lose on Sunday, as mad as a lot of people may be at Sirianni, he'll be back. You can't.
Oh yeah.
With a record like that, you imagine the reputation the Eagles would have if they fired him after that kind of track record. So he'll be back either way.
No coach would want to come here.
Exactly. But speaking of coaching, I'm curious your take on this. So we know Kellen Moore is interviewing for 3 head coaching positions, I think. At Dallas, was it New Orleans?
2 today. 2 of them was today, 1 tomorrow.
Right. Okay. So, you listen to sports radio, and look, it's a valid point. How focused can he be on the game if he's doing these coaching interviews? I mean, if he gets one of these jobs, look, he's making a good living now, but if he gets one of these jobs,
Sure.
he's making a huge living. His life will change dramatically. That being said, I don't fault him. Anybody would go on the interviews to be, anybody. I don't fault anybody for trying to improve themselves, but I think the NFL needs to do something about this rule. I don't know what the answer would be, but guys need to be focused on the job at hand if they're still in the playoffs. I remember back a couple of years ago when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, and Jonathan Gannon, who was the DC at the time, is talking to Arizona on the week off before the Super Bowl. And if you recall, in the entire second half, the Eagles couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes one time. All they needed was one stop, and they would have won the game. But the defense couldn't do it. And you got to wonder, is that because Jonathan Gannon's attention was all over the place?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good. I get it too, but I think the league need to create a rule that if there's a team in the playoffs, this deep into the playoffs, if you want to interview their coach, you can't until that team loses or until after the Super Bowl. These guys are professionals, so I would expect that they should be able to maybe go do an interview and do their job. But honestly, I just don't think it's appropriate to do, number one, that many. I'm bothered that it's the Cowboys as one of the interviews.
Well,
he
no.
should have. He's easily accessible to them, right? He coached there. You guys have a relationship with him. You can wait until after.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? But I don't like the idea. I don't put a ton of what can I say? I don't put a lot on coaches because from an athlete perspective, we got to go out there and play the game. I don't care what the coach, of course, it's his job to put us in a position to win. Ultimately, you have to execute whatever the coach is saying or whatever his game plan is. But still, the offensive coordinator, especially with not calling the best game against the Green Bay Packers, needs to be in Philadelphia watching every bit of film he can watch, coming up with every bit of scheme he can come up with to get this team to the NFC Championship. Those interviewing opportunities are going to be there. So I don't like it, but hopefully he can come back and do his job.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I misunderstood you. So you have a problem with him talking to the Cowboys now, but you don't have a problem with him talking to the Cowboys overall, right?
Oh no, I really don't care.
Right.
But after the
right. No, I agree.
Round,
because
I just think it's weird that they allow these interviews to happen with coaches who are in these big moments.
I agree.
I think it's a little bit weird.
Because you got to prepare for the interview, which is going to take time. The interview itself is probably going to take a couple of hours, and that's taking you away from game planning for what is the biggest game of your season to date. So
3 teams in 2 days, man. And then a day before the game.
Yeah.
And you don't have a night game. You got a 3:00 game in the afternoon.
Yeah, no,
it's like
it shouldn't be.
What are you doing?
It shouldn't be. All right.
Weird, man.
So let's well, actually, do you have anything else for me? Because otherwise we can get to our predictions.
We get okay. Yeah, I got a thought that I thought about when you were talking. Just quickly here. So, obviously, we're rooting for another home game, but when you bring up weather, right? Do you want to go to Detroit and kick inside the dome if you're Jake Elliott? Maybe Jake wants to kick inside the dome for the NFC Championship game.
That's a great point.
And we get snow down here anytime in January.
Well, but you know what? But that might be better for Jake Elliott, and not just because of the weather.
Yeah.
I got to think if he's away and not in front of the home crowd, maybe he doesn't feel as much pressure. You know what I mean? It's like in baseball when a team's going through a slump, when a team's going through, a 5 or 6 game losing streak, and they're at home, you go on the road, get away from the crowd that's booing you.
Yeah.
And even though you're in enemy territory, you can relax a little bit.
Because that's what they're supposed to be doing. When your hometown boos you, it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, but
really,
come on.
Right now.
But if Jake Elliott comes out for a field goal attempt on Sunday in a 0-0 game in the second quarter, and I don't know, say it's a 47, 48-yard kick, and he
Yeah.
misses it, you know there's going to be a
Oof.
lot of boos.
Oof. Oh, it's going to be boos. The boos are going to start if the score is 0-0 at that time. You just mentioned the
Well,
boos
that's
have
a good point.
already started.
Yeah, right.
They might start booing after the first drive if it doesn't look good
That's
because
not.
they're because Kellen Moore last game, if he comes out calling some foolishness, they're going to be booing after the first drive.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and that's the thing all season long, because what do they say? The first 15 plays are scripted, right? It seems like
Yeah,
the first 15
yeah,
plays don't do much.
yeah. They
You
don't they
know?
don't do a whole lot of anything, honestly.
That's why I really wonder why Kellen Moore has gotten so much, interest in terms of head coaching. I mean,
Yeah,
you said it yourself, um, you know, in terms of Sirianni,
yeah.
the roster, the offense. So with that in mind, is it really Kellen Moore or is it the roster? I mean, he did
That's
not
why I
have.
said that's why
He
I
did.
said that you got to get some credit
Yeah,
to Howie.
it was sure, but I mean, Kellen Moore did not have a good game against Green Bay.
No,
I
it
mean, that game
wasn't.
plan. I can't tell you how many times, just in that one game. I mean,
Hmm.
you were probably the same way. You screaming at the TV, give the ball to Barkley, and they started in the first quarter,
Yep.
handing him the ball,
And
and
he just stopped.
and they just stopped, and that has happened so many times this season,
It's
and
weird,
I
man.
don't quite understand it. So
Yeah.
hopefully on Sunday, you hand the ball to Barkley, and even if it doesn't work the first few times, you don't give up on it, man. You keep doing
Yeah.
it.
Keep going. You got one of the best offensive lines in the league.
All right. So we began this conversation by saying that you're worried about Sunday,
A little bit.
but you said you think the Eagles are going to win.
I
Do
do.
you have a did you look into your Tyrone Sharper crystal ball that you got from the
Ooh.
Sharper image? And
This is so much pressure, Jay. Last time you guys clipped me, I was spot on with I think what was it, the Giants game? Was it the Giants game?
I don't
It
remember.
was earlier in the season and I predicted it spot on and I was like, "Oh yeah, I did say that." Oh man, I usually
It's
don't
all
like doing
downhill from here,
predictions.
buddy.
I know, right? I don't like doing predictions definitely in the playoffs. And I wasn't gonna do any more, but Jay, you're my guy, so I gotta do it for you.
Appreciate it. Well, listen,
I go,
you
I
don't have
go.
to if you don't want to. I mean,
No, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it for fun because if I get it right again, you guys can clip it again, and then people will really think I'm like Nostradamus or something.
hey, listen,
I really just love ball, you guys. I just watch a lot of football, man. I just, it, I don't know. Maybe I know the script
you
writers
know
for the
your
NFL.
stuff.
I don't know. Um, this one is tough, man. I think the snow is going to bring the scoring down. So
Agreed.
I go 24-16 birds.
24-16. All right, we have a similar gap in scoring. You have an 8-point win, right? 24-16. I
Yeah.
agree. I think the score is going to be down too. I'm saying 17-10 Eagles.
Okay.
17-10.
Yep.
So
I could see that. I could see that.
so
And
we
I even think I went on the higher end for how much I think the game is going to be affected by the snow. But I think I see Saquon having another big day, man.
can you
Um,
even in the snow? You think he's gonna be
yeah.
like Shady McCoy, huh?
I think he has to be. He better go talk to him and call him or something. Like, man, I'm sorry I broke your records, but you got to send me some cleats or something. But I don't know. There's something about I really like Saquon, man. He seems like just off the field, he seems like a really good guy. I think his headspace is in the right place. I think he's hungry to want to win, and I don't think a little bit of snow is going to stop the quads from running into the end zone. So, I think Saquon has another big day. I think that offensive line is going to throw the Rams around again. They're going to be cold. They're going to be shivering, and yeah, I think Saquon has a big day. 2K say, 2K say.
Well, we'll see what happens. And we got to assume it's going to be Detroit in the other game.
Yeah, Detroit. I don't know, man. I think I got the Commanders upset in Detroit.
Do you really?
Hmm.
So you're talking about an Eagles Commanders NFC Championship game?
Hmm.
Wow, that would be cool.
Yep.
Well,
And I think that's why the Eagles had to lose to them in that second game of the regular season so they can beat them in an NFC championship.
okay, now you say that because you're of the thinking that you can't beat a team 3 times in one season, right?
Yeah, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. I think that's just the way the script writers have it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's the truth. It is. It is hard to beat a team 3 times.
Yeah.
So we'll see
So
what
we'll
happens.
see.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So we have to hope for the best on
Yep.
Sunday,
Birds.
and assuming the Eagles win, why don't we do this next week before the NFC Championship game?
All for it. Even if they lose, we could do it.
Okay. You know what?
I got my box of tissues ready just in case it goes wrong. And I'll be ready to wipe my tears while I'm talking to you about the game.
Hey, at
So
least
either way, we could do it. We can plan on doing
hey,
it.
if they lose, at least we got the Sixers, right?
Oh gosh, man, Sixers make me want to jump out of an airplane again, man.
That's why we need this football season to go on as long as possible.
No, man.
The closer they can get us to spring training, the better, right?
The city needs this so bad. I want this so bad for Philadelphia, man. I know how the city's going to be if they win. It's going to bring so many people together. It's going to be a great time in Philadelphia if they can get this done. So
And can I tell you, and I'll end
go
with this,
Eagles.
because you and I talked before we started recording, and I said, yeah, let's do like a half hour. We're just talking Eagles. It's been an hour.
You know how we do, man.
I know.
If we didn't have to work, we would be in the control room talking about sports
Right.
all day long.
The damn job gets in the way.
Yeah.
I would love to see Merrill Reese get to call another Super Bowl.
I know, right?
I mean,
That'd be fantastic.
it's because I like when I was a kid, and I don't know if you were the same way. Like I always knew I wanted to go into broadcasting, so I gravitated toward broadcasters when I was a kid. Merrill Reese was one of them, and I idolized the guy growing up. And when I got to meet him finally and interview him, nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
And when he got to make that winning call after the 2017 season, and by then he was like in his I want to say was it his 40th year, I guess, maybe 41st doing games, that he
Something like
finally
that.
got to call a Super Bowl. And look, the man just turned 82. Amazingly, he hasn't lost his fastball at all. I mean, he still calls
going.
it an amazing game. That being said, you don't know how much longer he's going to be doing it. I would
Yeah.
love to see him get another Super Bowl before he. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to call it quits, but I'd love to see him get to call another Super Bowl. The man deserves it.
It's too good of a job. If I was Merrill, I wouldn't. They would have to take me off of the seat, man, because I wouldn't want to give it up either. But yeah, I agree, Jay. I would definitely love to hear Merrill call that one more time. Philadelphia, this is for you.
Right.
So that would be fantastic.
That would be awesome. All right, man.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
Yes, always.
We shall. Well, either way, we'll do it again next week. But hopefully, we're
Yeah.
talking about a win and looking toward the
yeah.
NFC Championship game. And I will thank everybody for watching and for listening to the Convo. But
sir.
Tyrone,
Thank you,
since you're
guys.
my co-host, I want you to end the show and end it in Tyrone Sharper fashion. This will be the best ending we've ever had because it's Tyrone doing it.
Oh boy, here we go. The pressure on a Friday night. Well, thank you guys for watching. It has been a pleasure always to be with my guy Jay here. Everyone, wear your green. Go Birds, 3 o'clock Sunday. If you're going to the game, dress warm. This has been the Philly Sports Convo, the playoff special. We'll see you next time. How's that, Jay?
Dude, that was fantastic. Could you come on every show?